सर यहाँ हैं, मैं भी हूँ, नहीं तो नहीं।
Okay. Thank you all for that very warm welcome. And friends, the subject on which I am speaking today is the Indic roots of Indian democracy. So, why do I call the title of this presentation the Indic roots of Indian democracy? Further I talk about creating a democracy Indian style. So why do I do this? Why do I call creating a democracy Indian style? I say so because I believe that we as Indians, all of us in our country, have civilizational values of consensus and working with each other, and it is these civilizational values of consensus that have contributed to creating a uniquely Indian democracy, which is very different in many ways from how it is practiced in other countries. It is very important for all of us as a people to recognize that. Hence this title, I shall touch upon this further in my presentation. So, India is without doubt the most youthful nation in the world. When I see all of you here today, I see a vast pool of energy. And combined with that vast pool of energy, I also see a huge capacity for independent thinking. Friends, it is this that constitutes leadership. The ability to provide leadership has everything to do with the capacity to think for yourselves. अपनी बुद्धि, अपना विवेक का इस्तेमाल करें हर चीज में. So, leadership, when we talk about it, I would say that self-esteem is the key to true leadership. And where does self-esteem come from? That's 75% of the trade in the world and 85% of the GDP. It is a unique opportunity for India to contribute to the world stage and to help in bringing about peace building and reconciliation and in so many other ways. In order to provide that leadership, every Indian should be aware of their traditions of democracy. What are those traditions? Okay. The modern Constitution of India is often talked about as the great document, and it is often argued that it is because we have the Indian Constitution that we have rule of law in India. And friends, my submission to you is slightly different. I think that we should not confuse cause and effect. It is India's constitution is as it is because it has been crafted by constitution makers who were aware of our civilizational values of a desire for consensus and a dislike for coercion. It is because these are our civilizational values that we were able to craft this constitution for ourselves. Why do I talk about civilizational values of a desire for consensus and a dislike for coercion? My suggestion to you is, please look around you. Wherever you go, you will see that Indians try to get along with each other. That while there is a broad respect for rules, at the same time, Indians do not like to force their will on the other person. And the most basic example, which all of you as students are aware, every student has to get a minimum attendance in order to take that exam. सही है, हर किसी को अटेंडेंस चाहिए होती है, नहीं तो एग्जाम में बैठने नहीं दिया जाता. And when many of us fall short of attendance, we have to go to our faculty member to ask him or her कि sir, मेरी attendance कम है, please allow me to take the exam. And I suggest to all of you that in 9 cases out of 10, your faculty member would say, never mind, I will do all I can to help you to take that exam. ऐसा नहीं होता, ऐसा ही होता है ना? होता है ना? तो क्या बोलोगे इसको? Desire to get along with everyone. The desire not to force your will on everyone. I will take you to another example. When you look at how policemen in the field, they are asked to observe traffic rules. I have seen so many instances when they stop a person and say, sir, आप ओवर स्पीडिंग कर रहे थे, मुझे आपका चालान काटना है. और उसके बाद जब उसने किसी को रोका, then that man says कि भाई why do you insist on making me pay this challan? I have seen policemen who argue very patiently with that passenger and tell him, sir, I have been authorized by you under the Motor Vehicles Act of this country, and it is my job to enforce those traffic rules. I respectfully ask you to pay this challan. That is important, that we try to explain the law to other people, that we take everyone along with us. And it is these civilizational values that are reflected in this constitution that we have given to ourselves. So, we have the civilizational values of a desire for consensus and a dislike of coercion combined with a robust institutional framework to underpin those values. So when we talk about the value of the Constitution, why is it so important? After all, when we go back in our history, we see that there were many benevolent kings. We all know about Ashoka, who had edicts engraved on stone in different parts of the country. Yes, no doubt there are benevolent kings, but when we talk about democracy and we talk about a rule of law, we need a framework of rules which binds the state to observe rule of law, which binds the state to observe freedoms. That is why a framework of rules is very important. And when we look at how those rules were crafted, let's look at the massive effort that was involved in discussion and debate. When we look at these active discussions over crafting the Indian Constitution, they begin from the 1920s onward and right up to 1950. These active discussions, which are spread over 20 to 30 years, they involved over 600 people. If we look just at the Constituent Assembly debates, they involved some 300 members. These people, if you take a very, very narrow and a conservative look at it, they spent 200,000 man-hours to discuss the rules that would form the basis of independent India. And if you look at it in its entirety, they spent 49 million man-hours in discussing the Constitution. Friends, I would also like to point out to you that 60% of the Muslim members of the Constituent Assembly chose to remain with us. So that is the kind of discussion and debate that has gone into crafting the Indian Constitution. What emerged and what has been guiding us till today showed a desire to involve everyone in the tasks of governance and to remove points of friction. It is this desire to involve everyone in the tasks of governance that is a key attribute of democracy. Of the choices that were finally made by the Constituent Assembly, I would invite you to look at just 3 choices. Think back to 1947. Notice the context. There were multiple fault lines in the fabric of Indian society. There were fault lines along so many categories. All of you come from different states in the nation. Many of you speak different languages. And after that, the Constituent Assembly framers had a great confidence in the common sense of the people of India. In 1947, we still had a substantially illiterate population. After that, the Constitution framers chose to go in for universal adult franchise. Even though there were many people who said that, the right to vote should be restricted to those who have property. It was not agreed to. They all agreed to provide universal adult franchise. They all agreed to provide reservations for helpless and depressed classes. They all agreed to provide the rights of religious and linguistic minorities. And today, in 2023, when we look back at 75 years of India's independence, we notice that all three choices have been substantially maintained. They have not been disturbed. This in itself is a major illumination of how Indians believe in democratic values. So, why do you think the constitution framers had so much belief in these civilizational values? Friends, I suggest to you that they had this belief because they did have a sense of common destiny and purpose. When we are crafting a nation, it is this sense of common destiny, common purpose, and ethos that unites all of us. All of them were aware that we have overthrown a yoke of 200 years of colonial rule. They all knew that these fault lines exist among us, and yet they were all sure that in the constitution that they were framing for us, there should be, everyone has the right to expect equal and fair treatment in the broadest sense of the word. And that understanding is something that has remained in all these years. So many people can ask, why do we really need such a constitution after all, if we are all imbued with these democratic desire for consensus and coercion? Why do we need it? We need it because a constitution, every civilized society, a free society, needs a framework of rules that uphold laws. And what is especially important about the constitution is that it is made by us. It is not given to us by anyone. Remember, 49 million man-hours spent in debating and discussing it. It is we Indians who have crafted this constitution for ourselves. Many people like to say that, the Indian constitution borrows extensively from different constitutions. Perhaps. But what to borrow, what to leave out, that is a conscious choice. And the framers of the Indian constitution exercise that choice to bring out those laws, those clauses that would protect our freedoms. These laws have not been given to us by any religious authority. And here I would like to point out that when we look at the history of Europe, in the 18th century, Europe discovered this principle of laws that are made by the common people, that are not given to them by any religious authority. They called it the Enlightenment. Many of you would have heard of something called the Magna Carta that comes from England. Do you know how many people were involved in drawing up the Magna Carta? Any guesses? कितने लोग थे मैग्ना कार्टा में? बहुत चर्चा सुनी होगी आपने कि मैग्ना कार्टा था, दैट इज द ओरिजिनल डॉक्यूमेंट ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी. कितने लोग थे? 13 barons and the English king negotiated something called the Magna Carta. When you look at Indian history, you will find so many examples of people telling the king, these are our laws. You better respect those laws. Over here, there are many people from Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu से कितने हैं? हाथ ऊपर खड़े. Tamil Nadu. Remember the Uttara Merur inscription in Kachipuram district of Tamil Nadu? You would know about that. There would be many people here from Gujarat. Gujarat से कितने लोग हैं? अपने हाथ ऊपर करें. गुजरात में 592 AD में चार्टर ऑफ विष्णु सेन आता है. What is this charter of Vishnu Sen? Let's look at it. This charter of Vishnu Sen 6ठी सदी से आता है. This is negotiated between the community of merchants of Gujarat and Samant Vishnu Sen. What is it called? It is the आचार स्थिति पत्र. आचार स्थिति पत्र का मतलब है कि उस इलाके में जो भी टैक्सेस और लॉज फॉलो किए जाते थे उनको कोडिफाई करके इस आचार स्थिति पत्र में डाला गया है. ये कॉपर प्लेट पे अंकित किया गया है. व्हाट डज इट से? some of the sample provisions. It has as many over 60 provisions. Some provisions are property belonging to a person who had died without a son should not be confiscated. And you find this rule in so many charters across the country, that if the grahast does not have sons of his body, he should still have the right to bestow his property as he thinks fit. Officials should not have the right to forcibly enter private houses. A false or negligent suit should not be entertained. Nobody should be arrested on mere suspicion. Today we talk of Article 21, that nobody can be deprived of their life and liberty without due process of law. Well, this charter of Vishnu Sen has that provision which says कि मुझे सिर्फ आपके ऊपर शक है, इसलिए मैं आपके घर में घुस के आपको अरेस्ट नहीं कर सकता. उसके लिए आपको कोई ना कोई एविडेंस चाहिए. हम महिलाओं की बात करते हैं. इस चार्टर में ये भी प्रोविज़न है कि बीवी को हस्बैंड गिल्टी है इसलिए अरेस्ट नहीं किया जा सकता. अलग अलग आइटम्स पे टैक्स रेट्स डिफाइंड हैं. इट सेज क्लियरली ऑन अ बैग ऑफ व्हीट, ऑन अ बैग ऑफ राइस, ऑन यूटेंसिल्स, हाउ मेनी सिल्वर और कॉपर कॉइन्स मस्ट बी पेड. एंड if you are going for a religious purpose, then there is a concession which is given over there. These are just two of the most well-known examples. I cite these examples over here because they are included in so many history books which I assume that you have read. But there are many that are distributed all over the country. So friends, when we say that the Constitution of India is the Adi Vakya, what we mean is that the Constitution is much more than the relationship between the people and the state. It defines our civilizational values. It defines how we behave with each other. और आप किसी भी क्षेत्र में देखें, आपको ये दिख जाता है. Just the other day, I saw this video on YouTube. आप लोगों ने भी शायद देखा होगा. It was about an interaction between an official at the toll naka and a fellow in a government vehicle. That gentleman was refusing to pay the toll. He was saying, you know, मैं सरकारी हूँ, मुझे टोल देने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. और टोल ऑफिशियल ने उसको रोका और उसको बोला, सर ऐसा नहीं है, ये जो मेरे पास किताब कुंजी है जिसके अंदर रूल लिखे हैं उसके हिसाब से आपको टोल देना पड़ेगा. पूरा यूट्यूब पे है. सो that discussion went on for 15-20 minutes. That toll official did not lose his cool. He was not rude. He told that fellow, sir, I entreat you, you must pay the toll. Government does not mean that you don't have to pay the toll. And at the end of 20 minutes, there was a huge queue of passenger vehicles and buses over there. Then that toll official told that gentleman, sir, you are blocking the road of everyone over here. आप उनको आगे नहीं जाने दे रहे हैं. ये बहुत रूड बिहेवियर माना जाता है. कृपया आप अपना टोल दें. तब जाके वो सरकारी आदमी को शर्म आई और उसने पैसे दिए और वो आगे गया. द पॉइंट इज़ कि इस तरह का जो इंटरैक्शन है, जहाँ रूल कुछ कहता है, हमारे पास आज भी हिंदुस्तान में ऐसे कई लोग हैं जो कहते हैं कि हम उसका पालन नहीं करेंगे. उसके बाद भी जो लोग उस नियम को इम्प्लीमेंट करते हैं वो फिर भी कोशिश करते हैं कि भाई हम लोग आपको ये रूल क्यों है ये समझाने की कोशिश करें. और ये सिर्फ रूल की बात नहीं है, आप सब लोग सज्ञान लोग हैं, अपने विवेक का इस्तेमाल करें. यू कैन सी दिस वैल्यू ऑफ कंसेंसस एवरीवेयर, वॉट एवर बी द स्फीयर दैट यू सी इन इंडिया. माई सजेशन टू ऑल ऑफ यू यंग पीपल इज that you should use your viveka. Don't depend on received wisdom. Whatever I have told you today, all this information is available on the internet. चार्टर ऑफ विष्णु सेन का जो ट्रांसक्रिप्शन है वो भी इंटरनेट पे अवेलेबल है. जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली के डिबेट्स हैं वो भी इंटरनेट पे अवेलेबल है. ज़रूर वहाँ जाएं, पढ़ें, अपने आप अपना विवेक का इस्तेमाल करें और उस हिसाब से निर्णय लें कि इंडिया में डेमोक्रेसी की क्वालिटी क्या है. आज ही मैंने पेपर में देखा, और देखिए जो भारतीय नहीं है, जो हिंदुस्तानी नहीं है, उसे फ्रीडम है कि वो आपको क्रिटिसाइज करे. इट्स अ फ्री वर्ल्ड. ही कैन एक्सप्रेस एनी ओपिनियन. वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू से कि भाई आप हमें क्रिटिसाइज ना करें, पर जो वो आपके बारे में कह रहा है, आपके ऊपर जजमेंट डाल रहा है, आपको उसकी बात को सोच समझ के ही देखना चाहिए. आज ही के पेपर में खबर है, एक एनजीओ है ह्यूमन राइट्स वॉच करके, वो पूरे विश्व के ह्यूमन राइट्स का कस्टोडियन अपने आप को मानता है. उन्होंने अपने जो रिपोर्ट 2023 की वर्ल्ड ह्यूमन राइट्स की रिपोर्ट छापी है, उसमें उन्होंने कहा है कि इंडिया का ह्यूमन राइट्स का रिकॉर्ड खराब है, और उसमें ये भी कहा है कि यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स, United Kingdom and the European Union, all these three formations are reaching out to the Indian government in the interest of trade, in the interest of Indian security, and that they are not paying attention to abuses of human rights in India. Not only that, the paper also says that Human Rights Watch has cautioned businessmen from investing in India, and they have said that people should think twice before shifting their production from China to India because of this. देखिए, ह्यूमन राइट्स वॉच हैज़ इट्स एवरी राइट. हम किसी को, हम वो हिंदुस्तानी ऐसे लोग नहीं हैं कि किसी को जाके बोलें कि तुम ये मत बोलो. वी डोंट से दैट. बट you as Indians should take your own call on how democratic we are. And please look at information. Don't go by opinion. I completely disagree with the previous speaker when he said कि महिलाओं को वोट करने का अधिकार दिया नहीं जाता. मित्रों, 2019 लोकसभा इलेक्शन के आंकड़े हैं, आप लोग जाके देखिए. इन 2019, फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम सिंस 1947, more women than men have voted in Indian history. It is a record. When you look at the coverage of the Uttar Pradesh assembly elections last year, you will find that there are channels, so many channels, so many commentators, so many politicians जो कि कह रहे हैं महिलाओं को आप आके हमारे लिए वोट दीजिए. And the pitch that they give to women voters is very different from the pitch that they give to men voters. And for the first time, you had so many discussions on this theme. So when we say कि महिला oppressed है, मैं भी महिला हूँ भाई. आप अपने आप देखिए ना. Before this, I was there in the National Commission for Women, and whenever we interact with people, we ask them कि भाई, is anyone in your family oppressed? They would say no, but then I would ask them, in that case, why do you express this opinion that women are oppressed? Then that person, very often these are women, who would say, ki, you know, we are a very educated class of people. In my family, women are not oppressed. But I am sure, I have read in the paper, there will be others who are oppressed. Please make up your mind on the basis of the information that is available. The Indian state has done everything that is possible to protect the rights of people. They are there. Look at the information on the ground and take a decision on the basis of that. It is you in the end as a people who have to be conscious of your own values, and you have to be prepared to defend those values. And that can only happen अगर हमें अंदर से लगता है कि हमारे देश में सचमुच लोकतंत्र है, हम उस लोकतंत्र का संरक्षण भी कर सकते हैं हर तरीके से. और ये जो हम ट्रेडिशन ऑफ नेगोशिएशन की बात करते हैं कि ऑफन देयर इज़ अ नेगोशिएशन दैट गोज़ ऑन ओवर राइट्स एंड डेमोक्रेसी between the state and people. It is not just that it is there in our past. When we talk about the making of the constitution, when we talk about the charter of Vishnu, even today in 2023, we can see that that spirit is very much alive even today in the minds and behavior of the Indian people. We should remember the accords that ended the Naga insurgency, the Assam insurgency. India is perhaps the only country in the world that has successfully resolved the problem of insurgency. And a very interesting piece of information over here. On August 3, 2015, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland, IM faction, this was the largest of the 7 Naga insurgent groups. They announced a historic peace agreement with the center, agreeing to create mechanisms for greater autonomy for the Naga tribes. On that very same day, the Naga leaders asserted that they were a separate people. They didn't see that there were any contradiction between these two positions. So, here were the Nagas who were saying, we are a separate people, but we are very happy to remain within the Indian Union. And that is only one of the many examples of many insurgencies across the country. Look at Punjab. They have been peacefully resolved by a process of dialogue. That is what Indians are very good at. They are very good at a process of dialogue. Finally, I would like to say this to you, that democracy in India survives not only because of the constitution, but because it represents the values of consultation and governance by consensus. Friends, when do nations become great? Nations become great when they share a vision of what they have achieved, what they have contributed to the world. It is when we acknowledge our own traditions of democracy, our own traditions of peace, our own traditions of conflict resolution, that we become capable of providing leadership to the world, that we become capable of standing forth as a great nation, as a united nation. Thank you. Jai Hind.